If you have a Bible, again, open it up. John and chapter 7. John chapter 7, verses 1 to 24. That's on page 948. If you have a church Bible, page 948. As you look around at our world, it can seem at times that the world we live in is obsessed at times with spectacle, with outward appearance, with putting on a show. A world where the louder you shout, the brighter you shine, the more applause you get. It's almost as if you only matter if you can impress, if you can be impressive. If we could put the first slide up. We're looking this morning, though, at Jesus. We find, is he like that? Because we can ask the question, the world we live in, is it really any different to the world that he lived in? The answer in many ways is no, actually. In John 7, as we'll see, Jesus is stepping into the middle of a great festival. It was festival time in Jerusalem. It was a kind of religious and national celebration rolled into one in the capital city, Jerusalem. It was the Feast of Shelters. So there'd be noise, there'd be excitement, there'd be everyone asking, at this point in Jesus' ministry, a particular question, because he's become known somewhat. Where is he? What will he do? Will he wow us again with one of his miracles? Even his own brothers urge him in this passage, saying, basically, now's your chance. Go public. Show them what you can do. But we'll find that Jesus doesn't take the stage, at least not in the way everyone expects. He won't do that. He's not come to bask in the spotlight. He's come to do something else instead. So this morning we'll walk through this first part of John 7 that will show us something deeper than miracles, more important than getting the applause, actually a cure that we all desperately need. And that cure is Jesus himself. So we're going to split the passage in three. First of all, we'll look at section 1, part 1, which is John 7, 1 to 10. Thanks, Joe. Jesus. Is it Jesus' time to shine? Is it Jesus' time to shine? I wonder how many of you watch Britain's Got Talent. Maybe you avoid it like the plague. But even if you do avoid it like the plague, you know what it is, don't you? I want you to imagine Britain's Got Talent, and someone walks onto the stage. Anton Decker have sent him on, and there's a hush falls as he gets to the microphone. There's a crowd move to the edge of their seat, waiting to see what's going to happen. The judges are expectant, or possibly not, as they look at the person. There's a spotlight beaming down on them. Everyone assumes they're going to perform, don't they? Everyone assumes that maybe they'll have an absolutely jaw-droppingly beautiful voice as they sing. Or maybe they are a magician, but not one that we say, I know he does that, I've seen that a million times before. No, they do something that how on earth did he do that? The judges are ready to be impressed. But instead of singing, instead of making things disappear and reappear, they just quietly but directly begin speaking to the judges. Not about their talent, but about the judges themselves. And they reveal something uncomfortable about those judges' lives. Everybody's getting a bit uncomfortable, the crowd too. But he keeps revealing things about them. Personal things. About the judges, perhaps something they've been ignoring in their lives, or about their motives in why they're even there on the panel. Or about their hidden pain. No one knows what to make of it. It's not flashy. It's definitely not feel good. It's confrontational in a way, but it's not cruel. It's purposeful. It's very deliberate, but they haven't come to impress by revealing these things. They've come to rescue. They haven't come to entertain. They've come to speak truth that can lead to healing. Well, that's what Jesus is doing in John 7. That's what he's doing. His brothers want him to go to Jerusalem and wow the crowd. Up on the stage with the spotlight, do the impressive miracles. He's done it before, go and do it again, but do it in a bigger way this time, Jesus. But Jesus refuses. Because it's not time for that, he says. He doesn't want to dazzle the world with tricks. He actually wants to expose what's on the inside of people's hearts and show his heart through rescuing them. Let's just walk through verses 1 to 10 and see this. Verses 1 to 10 of John 7. I'll read them through. We'll stop and comment as we go. After this, so this was after a number of disciples had left Jesus actually. After this, Jesus travelled in Galilee. Galilee was in the north of the country. It was a quiet backwater, a bit like Ingleton compared with London. Okay, Jerusalem is where the bright lights are. He's up in the north in Galilee. Jesus travelled in Galilee since he didn't want to travel in Judea, which is where Jerusalem was, because the Jews were trying to kill him. He's already offended people, and some of them want to kill him. Verse 2. The Jewish festival of shelters was near. This was a festival that celebrated how God had looked after the Israelites during their time wandering in the wilderness after escaping Egypt and on their way to the promised land. And God had kept them and sheltered them and provided for them. So the Jewish festival was going to be happening very soon. So his brothers, Jesus' own brothers, his flesh and blood brothers now, they said to him, leave here, leave Galilee, leave the backwater of the north, and go to Judea. Go to Jerusalem. So your disciples, because there are people down there who've heard about you and they want to see you, so your disciples can see your works that you are doing. Go and put on a show. Jesus had done some miracles by now, and they were impressive. Very impressive. He turned water into wine. He's healed people as well, miraculously. Go and do it down there. Go and do it in Jerusalem again. Verse 4. For no one does anything in secret while he's seeking public recognition. There's an assumption there from his brothers that Jesus wants the adoration of the crowd because of the amazing things he can do and miracles, isn't there? Don't do it in secret, they're saying. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. Go on, get on the biggest stage and do it. That's to be said, if Jesus did go on to Britain's Got Talent and did some of the things he does in the Gospels, the miracles, he would win hands down, wouldn't he? Absolutely. But then John puts in brackets a comment for us in verse 5. For not even his brothers believed in him. And we think, what? They seem to believe that Jesus can do miraculous things. What are you talking about, John, writer of the Gospel? They do believe he can do these things. They absolutely do. They want him to go and show them off. But what John is telling us is they hadn't really understood who Jesus really was and why he really came. And they hadn't believed in that side of Jesus, the important side. They hadn't seen it. So verse 6, Jesus told them, my time has not yet arrived, but your time is always at hand. That's a really mysterious phrase, isn't it? My time has not yet arrived, but your time is always at hand. When Jesus, he'll mention it again in verse 8, speaks about my time, he's not speaking about the idea of my time to show off my miraculous power. There has been a time for that, and he's done it to show who he is. He is God the Son. To show that he comes to heal people, yes. But there's something else going on here. My time has not yet arrived. What's he speaking about? Well, we can pick up from the rest of John's Gospel that what he's talking about is actually going to the cross. That's his time. Sometimes he speaks about it as my hour has not yet come. The real thing he's come to do, the central thing he's come to do as God made man, is give his life for his people. Die for them. Pay for their sin. It's not the sort of thing you do on the stage of Britain's Got Talent, is it? He will do it on a shameful instrument of torture and death, the cross. Occasionally you do see people performing in such ways and then miraculously apparently getting out of it, but he won't, he will die. That's what he's actually come to do. But it's not time yet. He says your time is always at hand. I think there he's saying you can always come to me. But you need to believe that I've come to die for you. He goes on, verse 7, the world cannot hate you, but it does hate me. Why does it hate him? Why does he speak like this? He's not making this up, by the way. People do hate him for some of the things he's done. We'll go into more details about what he had done later. But they'd also begun to desert him in the previous passage because he said things that were hard for them to accept. The world does hate me because I testify about it. And what does he say about the world? And the world is you and me. He says he testifies, he tells them, your works are evil. That is hard to accept if someone says that to you, isn't it? That's not much fun to hear. Your works are evil. Continues, verse 8, go up to the festival yourselves. I'm not going up to this festival because, again, my time has not yet fully come. He will go to Jerusalem eventually to die there, but not this year. My time has not yet fully come. After he had said these things, he stayed in Galilee. Well, there is a little twist in verse 10. After his brothers had gone up to the festival, then he also went up, not openly, but secretly. So when he says he's not going to go openly. He's not going to go to put on a show with great fanfare. He's not going to go with trumpets before him, announcing his arrival. He's going to go secretly, quietly. Interestingly enough, when he does go into Jerusalem before he dies, there is a bit of a fanfare, isn't there? There is the riding on a donkey, there is the palm tree leaves, and there is the cloak spread before him as he goes in as a king. Not yet, though. He's not yet going as the king who's going to die. So, Jesus' brothers misunderstand his mission. They urge him to take his miracles to the big stage, to Jerusalem at festival time, but Jesus refuses. His time isn't about gaining applause, it's about heading towards the cross. His priority isn't impressing the world, but actually exposing its evil, exposing where it's gone very wrong, where we've gone wrong, so that people might seek rescue, forgiveness through his sacrifice. He will shine, but not through the spectacle that people are expecting. He will shine in the darkness on the cross, where his love and his obedience are displayed most fully. Most fully. The cross, not the applause of a crowd, is his goal. It's also our hope, isn't it? It's also our hope. Let's move on to the next few verses. Verses 11 to 18. Where does he get it from? Verses 11 to 18, where does he get it from? What we see in these verses is that Jesus, at the festival, speaks with the authority of the Father, offering truth that reveals God and leads to him. Let me tell you another story. Imagine for a moment a pianist. Maybe they have arrived on Britain's Got Talent. And they're playing a breathtaking piece of music on the stage. The music is so beautiful that the audience assumes it must be a classic. It must have been written by one of the great composers that they're familiar with. Mozart, maybe Chopin, or if you're more into pop culture, maybe Elton John. But afterwards, someone asks what the piece was. And the pianist replies, it was written by someone you don't know about. Someone you don't really get or have heard of. It's written by my Father. The crowd is puzzled. How could such beauty, such wisdom come from someone unknown? But the pianist hasn't finished speaking. He says, well, you can only really appreciate this piece if you want to know the one who wrote it. It's only in coming to him that you'll really appreciate it. Now, there's something of that going on with what Jesus teaches in the next few verses. What he's doing in his teaching is not his own words, and it's not self-serving. He's not here to impress with his originality or win arguments with cleverness. His words, he says, they come from my Father. Words that reveal the Father's will, the Father's character, the Father's heart. And he says that only those who genuinely want to do God's will recognize that it comes from God. Again, that's going to offend a bit, because the Jews thought they knew God the Father. And he's telling them, not sure you do. Let's go through the verses again. Verses 11 to 18. So he's gone up to the festival, verse 10, but secretly. The Jews were looking for him at the festival. So they were expecting him to come, and they were waiting for him to come. They were looking for him at the festival and saying, well, where is he? Where is he? Let's find him. But we're told something else. There was a lot of murmuring, verse 12, about him among the crowds. There's going to be disagreement amongst the crowds. Some were saying, he's a good man. He's a good man. Others were saying, no, on the contrary, he's deceiving the people. You're being naive. I know he might sound good in what he's saying and doing, but no. He's deceiving you. Still, verse 13, nobody was talking publicly about him for fear of the Jews. When it says the Jews there, it means the Jewish leaders and religious authorities. They were out to get Jesus by this point. And people were obviously a little bit wary of being overheard saying anything about Jesus in their presence, because they didn't want to get on the wrong side of the Jewish authorities and religious leaders either. So, verse 14. When the festival was already half over, Jesus went up into the temple and began to teach. So he stayed hidden through the first half. But then he is going to start speaking. The Jews were amazed and said, how is this man so learned since he hasn't been trained? They instantly get and understand that, wow, he can speak and teach in an impressive way. Really impressive. But which university did he go to?
Would you try again?
How has he learnt to do this? You got something similar in the last chapter as he began to speak of who he was and what he'd come to do. And people started saying, wait a minute, isn't this Joseph and Mary's son, the carpenter's son? And they're baffled again here. Where on earth does this come from? Jesus answered them, my teaching isn't mine. He's realised, a bit like that pianist playing the amazing tune, they've recognised that it's something incredible that he's saying. And they're wondering where it's come from. Jesus says, well, my teaching isn't mine, but is from the one who sent me. It's a theme right through John's Gospel that Jesus, the Son of God, has been sent by the Father into the world to reveal God the Father. And then he says, verse 17, if anyone wants to do his will, the will of the one who sent me, if anyone wants to do his will, he will know whether the teaching is from God or whether I am speaking on my own. In other words, that can sound quite strange, can't it? What's he saying? He's saying the person who really wants to know God, do you really want to know God? Do you want to know life with God? Eternity with God? Do you want to know what God intends for your life? Do you want to know who he is? If you do want to know, then you'll recognize that my words are from him. The flip side of that is, if you don't really want to know God, then you won't really listen to Jesus. Jesus is saying to the Jews, because the Jewish people would have said, oh, of course we want to know God. And Jesus is saying, well, the litmus test of that is this. Do you accept what I'm saying? Because if you don't, you don't really want to know God. You want to know a God of your own imagination and creation, not the real God in heaven, not the real Father. Again, verse 17, if anyone wants to do his will, he will know whether the teaching is from God or whether I'm speaking on my own. It continues, the one who speaks on his own, in other words, is not bringing words from God the Father. The one who speaks on his own seeks his own glory. Be very wary, Jesus is saying, of people who make it all about them. The one who speaks on his own seeks his own glory. But he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him, Jesus is saying, check what I'm saying. Am I seeking my own glory? Am I speaking in such a way that seeks the glory of God the Father? He who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is true. And there's no unrighteousness in him. There's no unrighteousness in him. It does challenge us to listen to Jesus, doesn't it, carefully? What direction is he pointing? To himself simply? Well, in a sense, yes, but why? So that we can know life with God, the Father. With him. Amid the confusion and the division, Jesus here teaches openly. He's saying, my words don't come from myself, they come from my Father, who sent me. And my aim isn't to glorify myself, but the one who sent me, the Father. And there's a simple test as to whether you get this. Do you really want to do God's will? Do you really want to know him and follow him and be with him? If so, you'll recognize, Jesus says, that I'm the true teacher, because my words will lead you to the Father. They'll lead you to God. It isn't self-serving teaching, but life-giving, because life is life with God the Father. Jesus gives us the truth that can bring us home to God if we'll trust him, believe him. This is what it means to believe him. He doesn't just share divine wisdom. He's not just a great life coach, okay? He's the revelation of God's heart, calling us to trust the one who sent him. Let's move on to the last section. So chapter 7, verses 11 to 18, look at his heart. Look at Jesus' heart. So what we're going to see in these verses is that Jesus exposes hypocrisy, invites us to judge him rightly, not by appearances, but by his mercy and truth. Another story, first of all. A man now goes into an emergency room late at night. He goes into the A&E. The receptionist sees he's not wearing scrubs though and is a bit alarmed. Who is this? His ID badge is on backwards so that no one can see it. And some of the staff don't even recognize him. But he approaches a patient and starts making urgent, immediate decisions, interrupting all the normal protocol, adjusting charts, calling for immediate surgery. It needs to happen now. The onlookers begin to panic. You would, wouldn't you, if somebody walked into an A&E and did that? Who does this guy think he is? Security's called. But just before he's removed, a nurse finally recognizes him. She's worked with him before. She realizes, I've worked with him. He's a brilliant trauma surgeon. Not quite sure how he got here, but he's a brilliant trauma surgeon. He's been called in because of a critical case. He didn't follow the usual rules. He didn't play by the normal protocols, but he came to heal, and he did. He saved that person. Again, this is what's happening with Jesus. The people accuse him of breaking the rules. They've accused him of breaking the Sabbath. This has happened earlier in John's Gospel. But they claim to love Moses, who gives the law, including revealing to the people God gave it, the law about the Sabbath. But the people, they don't like Jesus and the way he treats the law. So they want to kill him. So Jesus is going to reveal their hypocrisy, not to shame them, but to urge them, look deeper, don't judge by outward appearances, judge with righteous judgment. Again, let's look at the verses. Last section. Verse 19, through to verse 24. Okay, we'll just read them and look at what happens. These verses can be a little bit hard to get your head around, so I'll try and go slowly and try and explain what's happening. There's one verse I think that's very confusing and perhaps could be translated differently. So we'll work through them. Verse 19. Jesus says to the people, "Didn't Moses give you the law?" So this is the Jewish people, and back in the Old Testament, hundreds of years before, Moses on Mount Sinai, after the people had come out of Egypt, had given them God's law, the Ten Commandments, and various other laws accompanying that for them to live by as God's people. And the Jews held Moses in very high regard, therefore. So Jesus says, "Didn't Moses give you the law?" Yes, is the answer. They would all say yes, and it's God's law. And then he says, "Yet none of you keeps the law." You all admit, don't you, that you break it at times. Yet you don't kill each other for breaking the law, even when you really break it. And then he says, "Why are you trying to kill me?" They say, verse 20, "You have a demon." The crowd responded, "Who is trying to kill you?" Well, it's the Jewish religious authorities who are trying to kill him. Verse 21. "I performed one work, and you are all amazed." Or you could translate that, stunned. What he'd done was, he'd healed on the Sabbath. He'd healed on the Sabbath. It was an amazing miracle, but at the same time, it was one that offended the Jewish religious leaders because it was on the Sabbath, the Jewish holy day. And they said, "You're not allowed to do that on this day of the week." They were amazed, stunned, also offended. I did that one thing and you're all amazed. I apparently broke the law. When you break the law, you don't want to kill one another for it, but you want to kill me. Verse 22, Then he says, this is why Moses has given you circumcision, not that it comes from Moses but from the fathers, and you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. And I think, including me, as I was looking at this earlier in the week, begin to scratch our heads, right, where's this going now? I don't quite get this verse. That this is why Moses at the start, that this is why, could just as easily be translated because. The word because. So verse 22 would then read, because Moses has given you circumcision. And then he kind of opens a little bracket, because he wants them to know, I know my Bible though. I know that Moses wasn't the one who originally gave God's people circumcision. It was first given to Abraham 400 years before Moses. Jesus is just clocking, look, I know that. But Moses puts it in the law, kind of codifies it in the law. Let me start again, and I'll miss out that little bit in the middle about it comes from the fathers, because that's like a bracket. Because Moses has given you circumcision, you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. Because Moses said you could do this and should do this on the Sabbath, you do it. Because Moses said it. Then he goes on, verse 23. If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath, so that the law of Moses won't be broken, you could add that word in there, seriously? Are you seriously angry at me? Because I made a man entirely well on the Sabbath. Do you see how that works? You don't get angry with Moses for telling you to circumcise an 8-day-old baby or whatever on the Sabbath. You know that that's the right use of the Sabbath. But circumcision's a small thing. It's not even that important. I made someone entirely well on the Sabbath, miraculously, and you want to kill me for it? I think Jesus is entitled to say that, isn't he? So then he says, verse 24, stop judging according to outward appearances. Now, if you read that verse in isolation, you might assume that Jesus was telling us to stop judging other people around us by outward appearances, and that's good advice. Don't judge people by outward appearances. But here he's particularly saying, don't judge me by outward appearances. Stop judging according to outward appearances. You're just looking at surface level at what I'm saying and doing. You're not really digging down and figuring it out. Don't judge on outward appearances. Rather, judge according to righteous judgment. It's important that we don't judge Jesus on outward appearances. That we don't judge him on a caricature, perhaps, of who he is. What Jesus is saying here is, really take a proper look at what I say and what I do. Really dig down deep. Jesus here confronts the crowd's inconsistency. They claim to uphold Moses, but they break the law themselves. They're happy to circumcise on the Sabbath, but angry when Jesus heals on the Sabbath. They reject Jesus not because of truth, but because he doesn't fit their expectations. Jesus pleads with them and us, don't judge by appearances. Look at my teaching, listen to my teaching, look at my heart. I've come to rescue you. I have to say hard words to you so that you realize you need rescuing. Yes. But I've come to rescue you. That's a courageous thing to say, isn't it? It is courageous because saying these things is what gets him killed. But at the same time, he dies to save you. He even says of the very people who put the nails through his hands on the cross, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. I think that's a prayer to not just forgive them, but to open their eyes to see who I really am and trust me. So I want to finish with a bit of a question. How closely have you looked at Jesus? He will say things that might offend you. He will say things like, I testify about the world, about people, that their works are evil. You say, what, me? No, not me. And he says, yes, you and me. But I've come to rescue you. The Father has sent me to give my life to pay for your evil on the cross so that you can be forgiven and you can know life with God. Isn't that good? Look at his heart. He came for people like you and me. Shall we pray? Lord Jesus, we thank you that when the Father sent you, you came into this world. You came as the one who is God and man. You showed that you are God by your miraculous power. But you also showed that you came to rescue us. You came to save us from ourselves. Father, I pray that by your Spirit you would help us to really look at Jesus closely. Open our eyes to see who he is, to understand what he said, to realize why he came, to give his life as a ransom for many, and to trust him. To know life with you, Father, through your Son, Jesus. Help us in these things, we pray. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.